One of the things you've got to do is funnel the money, and sometimes that means that woefully underqualified people like me and Matt have got to wade into murky territory, because today it's only time to go and talk about the Saudi Arabian government and video games, because actually, there's something to talk about here. Yeah. And, I mean, if you're a League of Legends player, certainly with that whole drama that happened, you'll know.
Yeah, I mean, think about how much Microsoft bought Activision-Blizzard for. $70 million?
Peanuts.
That's pretty big, but the Public Investment Fund, which is targeting sports and video games and a couple other things, is about $480 billion of assets, which means that's a lot of video games could just be snapped up.
Now, sports are a beautiful thing.
I love them.
Competition's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And, throughout so much of the world, the likes of the Olympics have served to bring humanity together in competition.
Yep.
And certainly that has resulted in a few pretty awkward and bizarre photos and things happening when you kind of look into the past. Mm-hmm. It's one of the good things about sports. However, like all good things, it can be used for funky ends. Mm-hmm. So there's a term called sports-washing, right?
Yep.
So, and this is one of the reasons why, if you look at, say, sports in China, in the context of the Olympics, they go to extreme lengths to do what they can to compete in that arena. Yeah, I believe the same was going on with the USSR. I think they were pretty damn famous for their powerlifters and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you think about actually the pretty good example is Rocky IV.
Oh yeah,
that was just an entire this entire USA versus Russia narrative, but it's in a boxing match because everyone understood that metaphor.
Absolutely, yeah. So sports, it's important. There's different types of power that exist in the world. There's hard power, I think you know what that is. And there's soft power. Soft power is like the cultural stuff.
Yes.
Right? And doing really well in the realm of sports, and I guess now also the realm of esports, is a form of soft power. Yep. Now, I'm not going to say that, say, South Korea being humongous in esports is like a massively important source of soft power, but it certainly has made far more of the world aware of that nation, aware of a little bit more of their story. I mean, just by seeing them be really good at StarCraft 2, I know how their internet infrastructure came about in the 90s.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even Eastern Europe's a great example of that with the prevalence that they have in CSGO and Dota, where you're like, Eastern Europe is where so much of that talent really shines. And then on the gaming stages, like, you look at Dota 2, and then you see these teams, and you're like, oh, there's Russian and other Eastern European teams. Oh, suddenly there's like a lot of Americans who wouldn't have any sort of reason to think about that kind of area. Now knows people, knows their names, knows a little bit of how they conduct themselves. It's all very important stuff.
Yeah. So the term sports washing is basically about buying up sports teams in order to repair having a really, really bad public image. Yep. Let's just talk about, say, assassinating a journalist, branding homosexuality as being an illegal thing, and more. But hey, you own Newcastle and Inter Milan, so it's all good.
Yeah, football players will love you then.
Yeah, that's it. Jamal Khashoggi, who's that? No idea. Love some of the footy. Come on, Newcastle, boom, boom, etc. Yep. Of course, though, and that's obviously us talking about Saudi Arabia, they have not stopped at just the sports, though, because they're also getting involved in games. And it is important to follow the money here. So they own 14.2 million shares of Electronic Arts, just under 2 billion. 5.6 million Take-Two shares, that is about 1 billion. 37.9 Activision-Blizzard shares, which is about 3 billion. Over the last 2 months, they've picked up a few more. 5% of Capcom, that's 330 million. 5% of Nexon, which is just under 900 million. They entirely own esports orgs and platforms, ESL and Faceit, via the Savvy Gaming Group, and merged them.
Yep, indeed.
That's wild.
That's
how many people are going to know that that's what ESL, that's ESL's ownership.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one thing, if you've not been following very well, DreamHack and ESL merged in 2020. Now ESL and Faceit have merged and been bought by the Public Investment Fund, or the Savvy Gaming Group, which backs which is backed by the Public Investment Fund, which is the Saudi Arabian government. And you go, oh, the Saudi Arabian government owns DreamHack now.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah, great. I guess the sort of thing where I don't want to go too much out on them, but I don't think that's in the best interests of people who participate in DreamHack or watch DreamHack. But obviously, if you're ever is on the other end of making that sale.
Yeah.
It is in their interests financially. So it's one of those things of misaligned incentives between leadership and the people who are benefiting from what the leadership's organization creates.
Yep.
Then, of course, the Crown Prince's non-profit charity is also a majority shareholder in SNK, King of Fighters, and the Metal Slug devs.
Yep. So that's the kind of that's the kind of thing where if you have money, you can buy. And this isn't to say that all of these investments are going to be them doing what people are afraid Tencent will do, which is alter a bunch of game design decisions and kind of, push for, oh no, why are suddenly all our games really pro China? What's happening? That's not going to be the case here. It's just kind of seeding ideas of like, oh, Metal Slug, King of Fighters, oh, it's owned by the Saudis. They're not too bad. Seeding that little bit of an idea is what they're trying to do with a lot of this, like 5% ownership. Some of it's also just investment. They are just investing, trying to get money back, which, interestingly, wasn't working out very well for Activision-Blizzard because they bought them when they're very high, but they've ultimately made a profit if it goes through with a $95 sale.
Of course, yeah. So the reason we bring this up is because there's been very specific Saudi Arabia drama within the games industry that has happened before. A lot of it goes down to Neum. So Neum is this, I mean, do you want flying cars?
Artificial moon.
Robot butlers. Teleportation.
Yeah.
Star Trek. Basically, big dream city of the future, right?
Yeah, they call it a $500 billion mega city.
Yes. I am sure it will exist. Yes.
Definitely.
100% going to be real. So here's just some headlines. Blast terminates deal with Saudi city Neum. Riot Games ends Saudi Arabia's Neum partnership following controversy. Riot Games to reportedly establish ethics committee after Neum backlash.
Yeah.
Something about Riot having to ask their staff to go to a country where they're illegal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, where you have to think about who you're dealing with here. And whenever you do a deal that your staff and your community dislike so much that it forces you to set up an ethics committee, you think, well, that's pretty bad. And then you think, oh, will that backlash for a partnership deal? Technically, people should feel the same way, generally speaking, about all of this investment, because it's not quite as important as sponsorship in terms of immediacy, but it's the same idea of investment as, you're accepting money from these people.
Yeah. Neum, it's being built in our blood. The true cost of Saudi Arabia's $500 billion megacity. Basically, they're trying to evict 20,000 members of the Huedi tribe?
Huedi? I don't know.
I don't want to mess up their name, but they've lived there for generations, and they're just being evicted. There are no known plans to compensate them, and Saudi security forces killed one of the tribespeople.
Yep, one of the tribespeople who was saying, I'm very outspoken against this, and they're going to kill me, and they're going to say I have guns in my home, and I don't. And then they killed him and said he had guns in his home and opened fire. And I was like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You're just lying. And I was like, all right, sweet.
Yeah, and then, of course, when I think about Jamal Khashoggi and the entire situation with him, those orders, from what we understand, came directly from the top.
Yep. Or I'm not sure if
very high to the top.
Yeah, I'm not
Basically,
sure. Yeah.
He fucking knew.
Yeah, I believe the sources close to, I can't remember which organization it was, but sources closest to some news organization said that the Crown Prince himself was familiar that it was with the happening and was in support of it, or at least was okay with it. But the UN found that the order did come from high-ranking officials.
And then it's like, if you're the leader, the buck stops with you.
Yep,
it's pretty simple.
Yep.
And then even if you look at how a lot of these construction projects go, where they are slave labor. It is. I think the term is modern day slave labor, but it is that just the rates of people dying, the rates of suicides and stuff. I think a lot of the workers come from, say, the likes of Nepal, and it's a really people don't know that it's going on under all of the glitz and the money and the soft power projections. But what is actually going on is completely horrific.
Yeah, well, that's very specific to the sports-washing talk, because it's Olympic stadiums and football stadiums that are built under 40 degrees Celsius heat. And it's just like, Dad, just get another one. No worries.
Yeah, and that's how it goes. And a lot of people, in esports, don't want to have anything to do with this.
Yep.
And I think one of the problems when, so much of this acquisition stuff goes on is that money does make a lot of things really quite awkward. Yeah. I mean, we've got an example, with One War, obviously, that's going on. They essentially made a decision that, these like Russian teams and orgs, they cannot come. But if the players want to come, kind of not flying the flag of those teams or the sponsors or any of that, then the players are allowed to come and sort of play under neutral ground.
Yeah.
Now, of course, ESL is owned by, ESL is owned by the Saudi government.
Yep.
God, it feels so weird to say, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not literally owned. It's Savvy Gaming Group, which are all fully backed by it. So it basically is
as well. And then that's quite awkward because, and this is just how money and just things get lashed together and tied together. Because obviously there's the ongoing conflict in Yemen, right? Mm. It's got a lot less global awareness, but that is led by the Saudi military. Mm-hmm. It's been pointed out then that the ESL have also had sponsorship from the U.S. Air Force, which they say is to broaden recruitment. Then, of course, the awkwardness continues. I mean, a decent example there is female participation and establishing a women's-only league in December, where they basically said, here's their statement. At ESL Gaming, we truly believe in a world where everyone can be somebody. So going back to the grassroots level, creating an all-new ecosystem to ensure ambitious women CSGO players are given equal chances is a great step forward. And then that's a kind of an awkward thing. Yeah. There was some framing of apparently men in esports are so toxic that women need a safe space. There's also that if it's a female-only tournament, then it might encourage more participation, which could mean that it would then be sort of feeding upward in the ecosystem and sort of nourishing that talent. But of course, all of this is just really strange when you consider who they're owned by. They're taking literally billions of dollars of, maybe not.
It is $1 billion. It was $1 billion, I think, for ESL and Face It.
Okay, right. Yeah. So $1 billion taken of Saudi money. Of course, in Saudi Arabia, women have to get permission from a male relative to get married, start businesses, or leave domestic abuse shelters.
Yeah, and that's a couple of things. They've made a couple of steps in the past couple of years, since 2017, I think. Yeah. In terms of they're allowed to drive and they're allowed to go outside by themselves now. They're allowed to go to Mecca in groups without a male, which is an improvement. But a lot of things I've been reading is people are saying it's a little bit performative as opposed to really, really trying to super boost forward in how their actual treatment is. That's some sort of reads into it from news places. But it's that idea of the leaders were likely in talks with this, because this league was announced towards the end of December, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then the sale happened in January, so they're almost certainly in talks or thinking about the time. So it just comes across as a little bit, like you say, awkward.
I don't give a shit. My honest opinion of this is that the Saudi government don't care if ESL is a women's only league or is doing any of this, the more, I guess, forward-looking progressive stuff. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, when I look at all of this stuff, it's the status quo in their region. Yeah. It's a kingdom. They want stability. Mm-hmm. So that's how they're going to run their affairs at home. I think when you look at the wealth, the glitz, the glamour, I think that very much erodes any, this is a deeply held, religious belief, because, if that was the case, well, I mean, I can even tell you from the time when, my dad was working as a surveyor in that region, 20, 30 years ago, he'd be like, oh, yeah, no, totally hypocritical, load of bullshit. Absolutely. They do not live by what they preach at all. Yeah. The kind of, the rich elite types. Yeah,
which is a global affair.
Yeah, which then just means that it's all just a thing of localized control. Yeah. And when we then, see this stuff here, it's like, yeah, man, that's kind of awkward. That's awkward. And again, it just comes down to, if you're a majority shareholder, you're offered $1 billion. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And is that going to be the best interest of the talent, of the players, of the sort of global esports community? The answer is obviously no. But it's some convenient sports washing. And, when I think about NEAM, I think so much of it is just a soft power initiative. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to build some things. Yeah. Sure. I don't think they're going to build a $500 million mega city with floating cars and robot butlers anytime super soon. Or if there are robot butlers, it's going to be a pretty smart Roomba. Yeah. But I'm fairly sure that it is just another form of sports washing. And that's why they're trying to, have with NEAM, have all of these esports things go. And every time they've done it, or at least for the most part, it's resulted in a drama, and it's resulted in partners like Riot Games pulling out.
Yeah.
Because their fans have just said, well, their staff have said, I don't want to go there. I'm breaking the law because I'm gay. It's the players being like, backing up the staff, sticking by their values. So
yeah,
it's very awkward.
Yeah, it's very awkward and a bit complicated, but it's I guess the fact that they're moving in with, literally billions at a time there, because that was the 5% of Capcom, 5% of Nexon purchase was all took place in January this year. So that's straight up just here's 1,200 million. Here's 1.2 billion thrown into games for a little bit of control. They're never, it's not likely they're going to seek a lot of control, but it's going to be the point you're going to wake up one day in a couple of years and be like, holy shit, most of video games is like 20% of shareholder profits are being funneled into Saudi Arabia because of just or Tencent.
Just all of these big groups that are going about.
Yep.
And they do have some control over boards.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when they start to become large shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I suppose it's just the whole thing of money making money, rather than developers making games that make money, right? Like just the way that all of that ends up going. Yeah. I suppose because we're a young industry, like everybody, you look at like food brands, and it's like a tiny amount of overall corporations like just owns food. Like, food just as a thing, just food.
Just the concept of food all gone.
Yeah. And I think we're such a young industry that we're seeing that happen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really feel good because we've been used to a young and growing industry. Now we're seeing it mature and consolidate. And I think it just stings a little, which is really my takeaway. So I think that's mostly that. I guess, what do you think about this? If you're more, I suppose, geopolitically oriented or you're more investment oriented, I'd love to hear what your take on this thing is. Like, do you think that this is mostly going to be sort of silent, passive investing that's just to diversify, where these groups are invested? Or do you think that it could go a little bit different, that it maybe is sports washing? I mean, certainly when I look at the name side of it, I do think it's sports washing. But I'd love to hear what you think. So do let us know. Hope you found this to be an interesting little check-in with what the hell's going on with esports being, at least a large chunk of esports just being owned by, basically, not literally by the Saudi government, but by a Saudi government-backed group. Bit wild. Let us know. Have a wonderful day.